The town's doing everything it can. We're doing everything we can to hold this company accountable and to take care of these residents.
Right now at 5, the investigation into the owners of the troubled Concierge Apartments in Rocky Hill is really deepening. Thousands of them had to move out. Now calls are coming for a federal investigation into J.R.K. property holdings.
And your reporter Owen Kingsley first exposed these issues more than 2 weeks ago. He joins us live with the legal troubles the company has faced in other states. Owen.
Well, guys, state officials have accused the owners of Concierge Apartments for not investing enough into the buildings that could have avoided those burst pipes that led to all these problems, and not helping residents enough until they felt publicly pressured to do so. Now, we dug through records and we found several examples in recent years where J.R.K. Property Holdings is accused of taking advantage of tenants and then facing legal action. J.R.K. Property Holdings is one of the 50 largest apartment owners in the country, with more than 25,000 units. The company was accused of unlawfully using security deposits from their Massachusetts tenants to cover the cost of reasonable wear and tear, things like scuffs, nail holes, or faded paint. Last year, the state Supreme Court ruled that was illegal. In 2022, they bought an apartment complex in Maine called Red Bank Village. According to our local affiliate in Maine, tenants reported significant rent increases between $400 and $600, and J.R.K. appeared to be in violation of an ordinance requiring a 75-day notice for rent increases. When local leaders considered measures like eviction moratoriums and rent freezes, the company backed down and self-imposed a cap on renewal increases. Back in April of 2020, early into the COVID-19 pandemic, Washington state enacted an eviction moratorium. That state's attorney general sued J.R.K. Property Holdings for allegedly threatening at least 14 people at a Tacoma apartment building to either pay or vacate. The AG says management was aware of the no evictions law. J.R.K. Property Holdings settled that case by paying $300,000 to those residents. As far as other apartments in the state, J.R.K. Property Holdings also owns the residences on Bedford down in Stamford. The city there says they have not received any complaints from tenants over the past 6 months. We have continued to reach out to ownership management here on site, as well as those owners, J.R.K. Property Holdings, offering them an opportunity for an interview. The last that we've heard from them was a statement given to us 2 weeks ago. Your reporter live in Rocky Hill, I'm Owen Kingsley, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
All right, Owen, we know you will stay on top of it. Thank you very much.